Dear sister, let me tell you something life-saving. There is a sacred silence that protects your sanity. There is a divine discretion that shields your destiny. There are some things you must hide, not because you're ashamed, but because you're wise. Because not everything that's holy needs to be handled publicly. Everything birthed in prayer should be paraded before people who haven't even prayed for you. If you're going to walk in peace, you must guard it like a gate, hide it like a treasure, and protect it like a child. Some of you have been bleeding peace into spaces that were never built to hold your essence. You post your pain hoping for healing. You share your dreams, praying someone will believe. But what if God is calling you to hide some things not because they're small, but because they are sacred? Every woman must learn to conceal what is still becoming. You don't show the seed when it's in the soil. You wait until it sprouts. You don't speak your next move to people who couldn't survive your last battle. And you surely don't allow someone to dissect what they did not deliver. Hide your intentions until they're executed. Hide your healing until you're whole. Hide your wilderness season until your wilderness turns into worship. Because sometimes your silence is not weakness, it's warfare. You're not being passive, you're preserving. You're not hiding in fear, you're hiding in wisdom. God often hid his best things. He hid Moses in the reeds. He hid David in the field. He hid Jesus in Egypt. Why? Because when something is powerful, it must be protected in private until it is strong enough to stand in public. Your peace is too precious to be sacrificed on the altar of validation. You don't owe everyone access. Just because they want to know doesn't mean they need to know. Peace isn't just a feeling, it's a boundary. And boundaries are birthed by what you choose to keep private. Hide your clarity until confusion can't touch it. Hide your softness until someone's strength can hold it. Hide your dreams until your environment matches your destiny. Because anything exposed too early can be attacked too quickly. And peace doesn't grow in chaos, it grows in covering. Let God be your covering. Wisdom be your veil. Let discernment be your defense. Peace is not just a state of mind. Peace is not the absence of noise. Peace is not the result of perfect circumstances. Peace is sacred. Peace is divine. Peace is the evidence that God is present. Even when everything else is chaotic, your peace is not a luxury. It is a weapon. It is not optional. It is vital. Peace is that still, holy place within you where heaven whispers and fear is silenced. Peace is that sanctuary where you are reminded of who you are and whose you are. And because peace is sacred, it must be protected like anything holy. You cannot let just anything or anyone walk through the door of your stillness. Too many women lose their peace because they don't realize how valuable it is. You treat your peace like it's ordinary when it is heaven's gift to your soul. You keep handing it out to people who don't know what it cost you to get it. You let it be interrupted by drama, broken by opinions, drained by relationships that have expired. But you can't afford to give your peace away any longer. It's time to guard it like a gate. You cannot protect what you don't recognize as sacred. And peace is sacred because it comes from God. It isn't man-made, so it can't be man-maintained. It flows from the throne of grace and fills you in the secret place. That's why the enemy doesn't just want your finances. He doesn't just want your time. He wants your peace because he knows that once he disturbs your peace, he can distract your purpose. There is nothing more costly than living in peace and then forfeiting it for the approval of others. The moment you let someone disturb your peace, you give them power they were never supposed to have. But peace is too expensive to put on clearance. You can't discount it. You can't give it to everybody. Peace is for the woman who has chosen to be whole rather than just seen. Peace is for the woman who understands that it's better to be alone in stillness than surrounded in chaos. Your peace will offend people who are addicted to dysfunction. Your calmness will disturb those who thrive on chaos. Your silence will agitate people who want access to your vulnerability. But hear me clearly, you don't owe anyone your peace. Not when God gave it. Not when you had to fight, cry, pray, and survive just to find it. There's a reason Jesus slept in the middle of a storm. It wasn't because the storm wasn't real. It was because his peace was stronger than the wind. And just like him, you've got to learn how to protect your peace when everything around you is shaking. You have to train your spirit not to panic when the waves rise. You have to speak to your soul and say, "Be still. God is with me." You cannot protect your peace if you always allow your emotions to govern your decisions. Peace is not passive, it is intentional. You must choose peace every single day, even when you feel like choosing war. And make no mistake, peace doesn't come without war. You will have to fight for your peace. You will have to say no when it's easier to say yes. You will have to walk away from some conversations, some arguments, some rooms, not because you're weak, but because your peace matters more than being right. It matters more than being understood. You will have to disappoint people who think they are entitled to your energy. But remember, every time you protect your peace, you protect your purpose. Some of you are walking around with anxiety that doesn't belong to you. You're carrying burdens that were never yours to hold. You've allowed every text message, every rumor, every false accusation to rattle the stillness of your soul. But today is the day you draw the line. Today is the day you say, "My peace is sacred, and I will no longer trade it for temporary approval." Because when peace dwells in your heart, you can hear God more clearly. Peace saturates your spirit. You begin to walk differently. You pray from a place of confidence, not desperation. You love from a place of overflow, emptiness. Peace gives you clarity in confusion. It gives you patience in pressure. It gives you joy in the middle of judgment. That is why peace must be guarded like the holy thing it is. Just like the temple had walls and the Ark of the Covenant was covered, your spirit must be shielded. You must learn how to separate sacred things from public access. Don't let everyone speak into your life. Don't let every opinion into your atmosphere. Don't give everyone keys to your inner world. Peace thrives in private places. Peace grows in covered spaces. Peace deepens when you withdraw from noise and realign with heaven. Some of you are exhausted not because you're busy, but because you're exposed. You've let too many people too close, and now your peace is bleeding. But restoration begins when separation begins. There are some people who love you, but can't handle you peaceful. They're used to you chaotic. They're used to you reactive. Now that you've entered a new season, you can't take that pattern with you. Peace is the confirmation that you've matured. You don't argue the same. You don't retaliate the same. You don't explain as much, because now your peace is speaking louder than your defense. And when you protect it, you're not just preserving your mood, you're preserving your mission. So I challenge every woman reading this, make your peace your priority. Don't let your phone steal it. Don't let fear sabotage it. Don't let people disturb it. Don't let the enemy hijack it. Stand guard over your mind, your heart, your spirit. And every time something tries to shake your soul, whisper these words. There comes a point in every woman's life where she must learn the art of holding back, not from fear, not from shame, not from insecurity, but from wisdom, from clarity, from divine understanding that not everything God whispers into your spirit is meant to be shouted into the world. Not everything must be shared. There are certain things that are too precious to be spoken too soon. Certain dreams that are still forming. Certain wounds that are still healing. Certain prayers that are still waiting for their answers. And if you're not careful, you'll let your need for attention or validation push you into exposing something that was meant to be protected. Because let me tell you something about the sacred, it loses power when it is mishandled. Fastest way to drain what is holy is to display it before people who are not equipped to honor it. You've got to learn how to be okay with being quiet. You've got to learn how to withhold some details until God gives you the release to speak. Because not everyone around you is for you. Some are simply spectators. Some are sent to distract. Some are too immature to understand the depth of what God is doing in you. If you share sacred things with people who lack spiritual sight, they will mislabel, misinterpret, and misuse what you've revealed. That's why you must discern the difference between being transparent and being wise. Transparency isn't always spiritual. Sometimes it's trauma disguised as vulnerability. Sometimes it's a need to be seen. Let's be real, sometimes it's a cry for help that should have been whispered in prayer, not shouted on social media. You do not owe the world your process. You do not have to unpack every struggle publicly. You do not have to justify your growth. You do not have to explain every shift. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Let them ask. Because silence can be stronger than any statement. Silence can shield what your words would have exposed. Some of you have been bleeding in front of people who only show up to stare. You've opened up your heart to people who never had the capacity to carry it. You've spoken too soon, and now you're managing consequences instead of momentum. You birthed your vision out loud before it was mature enough to survive scrutiny. Can I tell you something, woman of God? You don't need to prove anything. Your life will testify. Your fruit will speak. Your peace will preach louder than your posts. And what God is doing in you doesn't need the applause of man to be legitimate. It only needs your obedience. Jesus was silent before Pilate. He didn't defend himself when falsely accused. He didn't explain himself to people who had already made up their minds. Why? Because purpose doesn't have to perform, and neither do you. There is divine strength in knowing when to speak and when to be still. Some of you are leaking destiny because you're talking too much, and not because you're not gifted, but because you're not guarded. You're in a season where God is trying to conceal you, but you keep uncovering yourself. You're in a time of preparation, but you're acting like it's promotion. Hear me, just because something is real doesn't mean it's ready. Just because it's stirring in your spirit doesn't mean it's time to share it with others. Some are born in secrecy. Some breakthroughs require silence. Some battles must be fought in the quiet corners of your soul. You don't have to update everyone on your every move. You don't need to prove that you're healing. Heal in peace. Grow in grace. Build in silence. Because when the time is right, God will reveal what you protected. He will bless what you buried in prayer. He will elevate what you hid in humility. But if you expose it too early, you make it vulnerable to attacks that could have been avoided. The enemy is always looking for a way in. Don't give him access through loose lips. Don't hand him the blueprint to your breakthrough. He can't read your mind, but he listens to your words. That's why some warfare didn't show up until after you started talking about what God showed you. There's a reason God hides his greatest works. He formed the world in darkness. He formed life in the womb. He formed Christ in a manger. Because the sacred is always shielded. The sacred is always wrapped in mystery before it is revealed in majesty. And you, woman of purpose, must learn to walk in mystery before you walk in manifestation. Not everything must be shared, because not everything is meant to be understood. Some things are just meant to be carried quietly, reverently, privately. Some things are between you and God, and that is enough. There will be moments where you feel the urge to explain your silence. Resist it. There will be moments where people question your stillness. Embrace it. You don't owe everyone access to your sacred space. The more valuable a thing is, the more it is protected. Diamonds don't sit on sidewalks. They're hidden. They're guarded. They're preserved. So today, I urge you to step into your next season quietly. Watch what happens when you pray more than you post. Watch what happens when you process in worship, not gossip. Watch what happens when you release the need to be understood and embrace the peace of being unseen for a time. Your silence will build strength. Your privacy will birth power. And when the time is right, when the foundation is solid, when the oil is ready, your spirit is grounded, God himself will bring into the open what you protected in the secret place. There is a type of wisdom that doesn't scream. It doesn't post. It doesn't prove. It doesn't parade its depth around for applause. It's not loud, but it is mighty. It's not flashy. It is fire tested. It's the wisdom of a woman who knows what to say, when to say it, and most importantly, when to say nothing at all. Because wisdom is not just in what you know. It's not just in what you learn. Real wisdom shows up in discernment and discretion. It shows up when you pause before you react. It shows up when you hold your tongue while others lose theirs. It shows up when you sense what others can't see and respond from a place of spirit, not flesh. There are some things that intellect can't teach you. School can give you knowledge. Books can give you information. But discernment, that's spirit-born. And discretion, that's spirit-trained. You don't just learn it, you live it. You're shaped in the fire of experience. You're refined in silence. You grow into wisdom by walking through places where only God could guide you. Every woman who walks in true authority carries two invisible tools: discernment and discretion. Discernment helps her see beneath the surface. Discretion helps her stay above the drama. Discernment helps her identify danger before it speaks. Discretion helps her hold peace in the presence of provocation. You can't buy this kind of wisdom. You earn it in prayer. You earn it in moments when you wanted to clap back but chose to worship instead. When you could have exposed the lie but chose to protect your peace. When you could have reacted emotionally but chose to wait for divine instruction. Every invitation deserves your response. Not every opportunity is from God. Not every door is opened by heaven. Not every person that comes into your life is assigned by the Spirit. It takes discernment to know the difference. Discernment is your spiritual radar. It picks up on things before they're seen with natural eyes. You have walked into a room and felt something wasn't right. That's discernment. You ever heard someone speak all the right words, but your spirit said something is off? That's discernment. And if you ignore it long enough, you'll start calling red flags faith tests, when in reality, God was warning you the whole time. Discernment is the protection of the wise. It is your spiritual instinct. It allows you to know what to say yes to and what to say no to without explanation. It gives you authority over confusion and power over deception. It's not about suspicion. It's about clarity. And when you have discernment, you don't fall for everything that looks good. You wait for what's God good. Because discretion is what keeps you wise in action. You can discern that someone is off, but discretion tells you how to move in love. You can sense that a door isn't yours, but discretion keeps you from badmouthing it. Discretion is the quiet confidence that says, I know what I know. I don't need to broadcast it. Discretion is your guardrail. It tells you when to speak and when to stay silent. It tells you what parts of your life to share and what parts to protect. Discretion doesn't suppress you. It preserves you. It doesn't keep you from being authentic. It keeps you from being exploited. There are people who would love to take your transparency and twist it into a weapon. That's why the wise woman learns that vulnerability must be covered in discernment. You can't just share everything with everyone and call it being real. Sometimes real gets you ruined. And sometimes silence is the strongest statement you'll ever make. Some of the most painful lessons are those that come from sharing too much with the wrong people. You gave them access and they misused it. You told them your heart and they dropped it. You trusted their smile, but they betrayed your spirit. Don't become bitter, become better. Learn the lesson. Wisdom is in restraint. Wisdom is in learning how to carry what God gave you without needing an audience to validate it. Discretion will keep you peaceful in places where others fall apart. It will keep you focused in environments that demand distraction. It will keep you dangerous to the enemy because he won't know what you're thinking, planning, or building. When you walk in discretion, you become a mystery, a sealed vessel, a temple that is guarded not out of fear, but out of value. The enemy is not omniscient. He can't read your mind. He learns from what you expose. He plots through what you post. Some of the warfare you're facing isn't because of what God said, it's because of what you said. You gave him a playbook by talking prematurely. When you learn to walk in discretion, you move in silence and speak only when heaven says, now? Every mature woman knows, just because you discern something doesn't mean you declare it. Just because you feel something doesn't mean you react to it. Just because you know the truth doesn't mean you have to defend it. Sometimes God is calling you to be still and let him speak for you. There is power in the pause. There is strength in silence. There is breakthrough in boundaries. And the woman who walks in discernment and discretion will go further, last longer, and stand stronger. There comes a moment in every strong woman's life when she realizes that the loudest battles are often won in silence. The most powerful movements happen not in public platforms, but in private places. That victory doesn't always sound like applause. Sometimes It sounds like nothing at all. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. It is not the absence of power. It is the evidence of discipline. It is not the absence of opinion. It is the presence of wisdom. Because there is a kind of strength that doesn't have to shout to be effective. A kind of courage that doesn't need an audience to prove it's real. A kind of woman who can sit in stillness and let God fight what she could have tried to fix. Let the world misinterpret you. Assume you're quiet because you're scared. Let them think your silence means surrender. But you know better. You know your silence is a weapon sharpened by discernment. It's forged in the fire of experience. It's birthed from battles where your words once made things worse. Now you've learned the art of restraint. You've learned that stillness is not shrinking. It's standing in sacred confidence. There are things that silence does that shouting never can. There are battles that are won when the enemy doesn't know your next move. There is breakthrough in holding your peace. When you're a woman who's rooted in identity, you don't need to announce everything. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain every decision. You know that just because you're silent doesn't mean you're not strong. It means you're wise. Some of the most powerful women in Scripture had their greatest breakthrough in silence. Hannah didn't scream in her barrenness. She wept in whispered prayers. Mary carried the Savior of the world in complete secrecy. Esther fasted in silence before she ever spoke to the king. Because silence is not passive, it's preparation. It is the sacred space where your spirit aligns with God's strategy. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to post every detail. You don't need to broadcast your battles. Why? Because when you are truly at peace, you don't need to prove a thing. The need to speak is often the ego's last cry for validation. But the soul that's secure can stay quiet, trusting that time, and God will reveal everything in due season. Have you ever been in a moment where everything in you wanted to speak up, to defend yourself, to justify your choices, to explain your perspective, but the Spirit of God whispered, "Be still"? That wasn't weakness, woman of purpose. That was power under control. That was heaven reminding you that your vindication doesn't come from your voice. It comes from your victory. The world will try to convince you that silence equals powerlessness, that if you're not loud, you're not strong. But kingdom women know the truth. Silence is the space where God speaks loudest. Silence is how you confuse the enemy. Silence is how you break cycles of reaction. Silence is how you reclaim your energy from draining conversations that go nowhere. Because when you stop talking, you start listening. And when you listen, you hear the voice that matters, not the critics, not the crowd, not the chaos, but the still small voice that calls you by name. The one who says, "I will fight your battles if you just hold your peace." Some of the deepest emotional wounds you carry came from moments when you spoke prematurely. You tried to explain your pain to people who didn't have the capacity to understand it. You gave your vulnerability to ears that were never trained to hear your heart. But silence teaches you to protect your pearls. It trains you to wait until the right time, the right place, and the right purpose. Hear this truth in your soul silences warfare. Silence disarms your enemies. It starves attention seekers. It unsettles the insecure because silence says, "I don't have to fight you. I've already won, duh." You win when you choose peace over pettiness. You win when you choose purpose over performance. You win when you choose to keep building instead of breaking down. And silence does not mean you are disengaged. It means you are discerning. You are not silent because you don't know what to say. You are silent because you've learned not everything deserves a response. Every opinion deserves your energy. Not every argument deserves your clarity. Some moments demand your absence more than your attention. There is a sacred strength in being silent when you could easily speak. That's not passivity, that's mastery. That's what Jesus modeled. He stood in front of accusers, mockers, liars, and murderers, and he said nothing. Not because he was weak, but because his silence was part of the plan. Because he knew God will always have the last word. Your silence might be misunderstood, but your strength will never go unnoticed. Your silence might confuse people, but it also confirms your authority. Because when you know who you are, you don't chase noise, you chase truth. You don't fight every battle. You let God choose the ones worth showing up for. Woman of God, I need you to hear this in your spirit. Silence does not shrink you. It surrounds you with power. It puts your energy in alignment. It gives God room to move. It keeps you clear in a noisy world. And it becomes a signal to heaven that says, I trust you more than I trust myself. Silence isn't retreat. It's resistance. It's you refusing to entertain what God didn't assign. It's you resisting the urge to prove your worth. It's you choosing elevation over reaction. And when you wield it well, silence becomes one of the greatest weapons in your arsenal. So let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them ask questions you don't answer. Let them wonder where you went. You didn't disappear. You ascended. You didn't lose your voice. You learned to value it. You didn't stop speaking. You just stopped leaking energy into places where it was being wasted. There's a divine mystery that runs all through Scripture, a pattern woven into the way God works. A pattern that doesn't always make sense to the natural mind. A pattern that confuses the proud and frustrates the impatient. If you've ever walked with God, truly walked with Him, you begin to see it. You begin to feel it. You begin to understand this truth. God often hides what He loves. Yes, the very things that carry glory often come wrapped in obscurity. The very people He has marked for greatness are often sent into hiding, not to punish them, not to reject them, but to protect them, to preserve them, to prepare them away from the reach of premature exposure. Hiding is not rejection. It is refinement. It is not punishment. It is positioning. When God hides you, it is never to destroy you. It is to develop what He has deposited within you. He hides because He loves. He conceals because what He has placed inside of you is too valuable to be left uncovered too soon. Look at the pattern. God hid Moses in a basket before He ever called him to speak before Pharaoh. He hid Joseph in a prison before he ever stood in Pharaoh's palace. He hid David in a field with sheep before placing a crown on his head. He hid Jesus in a manger in a carpenter's home, even in Egypt as a child, because what was hidden was holy. And some of you feel invisible right now. You feel overlooked. You feel buried. You've been asking God, why am I not being seen? Why haven't they recognized me? Why haven't they called my name yet? But what if I told you? You're not buried, you're planted. See, there's a difference. When something is buried, it's meant to die. But when something is planted, it's meant to grow. And God has planted you in the soil of obscurity so that your roots can run deep before your fruit ever shows. He's keeping you out of sight, not because you're unworthy, but because you are worthy of protection. You can't be publicly used if you haven't been privately built, and you can't carry glory if you haven't been grounded. There are some things that only hiding can teach you. In the hidden place, your motives are tested. Your identity is shaped. Your faith is forged. Your obedience is refined. In the hidden place, there are no crowds to impress, no platforms to chase, no applause to affirm you. It's just you and God, because He knows the weight of what's ahead of you. He knows the demand that's attached to the destiny. And so He hides you, not to hold you back, to hold you together. He hides you so that when He reveals you, you are ready, not perfect, but solid, rooted, disciplined, untouchable in character and unshakable in calling. He's not worried about the timing. He's the one who controls it. And if He's hiding you now, it's because He's protecting what's holy. He's shielding your name. He's covering your gifts. He's surrounding your purpose. Because there are some attacks you're not ready for. There are some platforms your heart can't handle yet. There are some blessings that would become burdens if they came too soon. Diamonds are formed in pressure, but they are also formed in darkness. Gold is purified in fire, but it is hidden in the earth first. Fruit grows in silence before it is seen. The same God who created these natural patterns uses the same principle for His people. You want to be seen, but He wants you to be secure. You want to be promoted, but He wants you to be pure. You want the spotlight, but He knows you need solitude. And so He hides you, not to punish you, to give you time. Time to heal, time to grow, time to mature into the woman who can carry what she prayed for. Not all hiding feels holy. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels unfair. You'll look around and see others advancing, being celebrated, being elevated, and wonder, what about me, God? But comparison is the thief of peace. Don't measure your worth by someone else's visibility. Don't confuse being seen by people with being favored by God. He knows where you are. He has not forgotten you. When the time is right, when the weight of His glory won't crush you, when the strength of your character can carry the call, He will reveal what He once concealed. But don't try to reveal yourself before God does. Don't force the door open. Don't promote yourself. Don't fight to be seen. Rest in the hiding place. Because what God hides, He honors. What He hides, He guards. And when He pulls back the curtain, no one will be able to deny the power on your life. So stay hidden until He says otherwise. Stay low until He lifts you up. Stay faithful in the unseen places. Stay obedient when no one is watching. Because it's in the shadows where oil is formed. It's in the stillness where anointing flows. It's in the quiet where God begins to speak loudest. And when He speaks, mountains move. When He reveals, doors swing wide. When He lifts you, no one can pull you down, because what was hidden by God will be revealed by God, and it will be sustained by God. There's a certain kind of clarity that comes when you stop needing to be understood by everyone and start protecting what God is doing in you. There's a deep shift in your walk when you begin to realize that not everyone who claps for you is connected to your calling. And not everyone who walks with you is qualified to witness your becoming, because your process is sacred. Your process is holy ground. It's the place where God molds you, heals you, breaks you, shapes you, begins something eternal in the secret places of your soul. Your process is not a spectacle. It's not a documentary for public entertainment. It is a consecrated journey between you and the one who created you. But too many times, we give people front row seats to something they were never called to watch. We give them access to our unfinished work and then get discouraged when they criticize the construction zone. But here's the truth. They were never meant to be there in the first place. People who don't understand your promise will always mishandle your process. They'll label it weakness when it's really wilderness. They'll call it confusion when it's actually cultivation. They'll look at you half-built and assume you're finished. But you're not done. You're just in progress. And progress is messy, personal, private, and divinely protected. You don't owe everyone an explanation for where you are. You don't have to apologize for being in process. You don't have to make people comfortable with your current stage of growth. Some people only love you when you're polished. But God loves you while you're still becoming. He loves you in the raw, the real, and the rough. He's not intimidated by your unfinished parts. Jesus performed miracles in public, but He often withdrew to pray in private. He poured out in the streets. He processed with the Father on mountains. Even when He was about to raise daughter from the dead, He put some people out of the room. Why? Because not everyone present had the faith, the honor, or the spiritual maturity to be part of what was about to happen. Some of you are frustrated not because you're failing, but because you've allowed too many voices into your process. You're listening to people who haven't paid the price to speak into your journey. You're letting opinions shape what only God should be forming, editing your becoming to appease people who were never assigned to your becoming, because you weren't designed to carry their expectations. You were designed to carry God's glory. But glory can't fall on a life that's leaking access. You have to guard the gates. You have to secure the sacred. You have to understand, just because someone was part of your past doesn't mean they deserve a seat in your process. Some connections were seasonal. Some relationships were only meant for a chapter, but you're trying to make temporary voices permanent companions. And it's delaying your destiny. There's a reason God told Abraham to leave his country, his kin, and his father's house. Because the next level requires separation. Next level demands privacy. Not because you're hiding out of fear, but because you're protecting your formation. Because when you're in process, you are vulnerable, not weak, vulnerable. And vulnerable doesn't mean accessible. You must learn how to be vulnerable with God, but guarded with man. You must learn how to trust upward more than you seek validation outward. Everyone cannot handle what you're growing into. Some people only support you when you're struggling because your success makes them uncomfortable. Others only show up when they benefit from your brokenness, not your breakthrough. But you weren't meant to bleed for entertainment. You weren't meant to explain your evolution to people who haven't survived your storms. Your process is a covenant, not a community event. God is doing something sacred in you, something private, something powerful. And if you're not careful, you'll expose what he's still developing. You'll unpack what's still being planted. You'll invite people into rooms where their dishonor disrupts the work of heaven. Some things are meant to be kept, not shared. Some revelations are for your journal, not your timeline. Some struggles are between your knees and the altar, not your friends and their advice, because this process, it's not always pretty. Sometimes it's pruning. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it feels like being hidden when you're ready to be revealed. But God hides what he's healing. God covers what he's correcting. God protects what's about to multiply. Your healing doesn't require public proof. Your growth doesn't need daily applause. The most powerful transformations happen where no one sees, where no one claps, where no one even knows. And when it's time, when the root is deep and the fruit is ripe, God will reveal what he developed in private. And no one will be able to deny what you've become. You are not being rude. You are being responsible. You are not withholding. You are protecting. You are not pushing people away. You are making room for the sacred work of God within you. In a loud, restless world that constantly demands more faster. And now peace has become rare, not because it no longer exists, but because too few are willing to go where it actually lives. Peace doesn't dwell in the spotlight. It doesn't thrive in crowded rooms or chaotic conversations. Peace doesn't follow applause, titles, or validation. Peace flourishes in private places. Peace is not the product of popularity. It is not the result of being understood. It is not found in how many people approve of your choices, your calling, or your growth. Peace is internal. It's not gifted by the world, and it cannot be stolen by it unless you give it away. But here's the truth most people don't tell you in order to protect your peace. You must protect your privacy. You must be willing to go low when others are loud. You must be willing to be hidden when others are racing for recognition. You must be willing to be still while others are moving fast, even if they don't know where they're going. Because peace doesn't grow in pressure. It grows in presence, in the presence of God, in the presence of stillness, in the quiet places where your soul can breathe and heaven can speak. Peace is cultivated where the noise ends. Some of you are weary, not because you lack strength, but because you lack silence. You're exhausted, not from doing too much, but from being too available. You've let too many voices into your sacred space, too many opinions into your process, too much noise into your mind. And now your peace is drowning beneath the weight of constant exposure. Even Jesus, in the middle of his divine mission, withdrew to solitary places to pray. Not because he was running from responsibility, but because he was protecting peace. He was staying aligned with the Father. He was preserving clarity. He was nurturing his inner life. And if the Son of God needed privacy to maintain peace, why wouldn't we? Peace requires boundaries. It requires you to say no when others want a yes. It requires you to disconnect without guilt. It requires you to silence your phone, step away from the crowd, and return to your center. Peace doesn't follow people, it follows priority. Peace matters to you. You must begin to organize your life in a way that honors it. Some of the greatest breakthroughs don't happen in noise, they happen in isolation. Not the kind of isolation that breaks you, but the kind that builds you. The kind where God begins to speak what only you were meant to hear. The kind where healing begins to rise in silence. Kind where revelation meets you when nobody else is watching. Because in private places, your identity is restored. In private places, your worth is affirmed. In private places, your vision is clarified. No distractions, no performance, no pressure. Just you raw and honest before God. That is where real peace lives. It's in those hidden moments before the world sees the fruit that God begins to shape the roots. It's in those tears, whispered prayers, quiet walks, still mornings that your soul starts to heal And the woman who learns to love that place, who learns to return to it regularly, becomes unshakable in public because she's anchored in private. You don't need the crowd to feel calm. You need clarity. You don't need everyone's approval. You need God's presence. And that kind of peace doesn't come from noise. It comes from knowing who you are when everything is silent. It comes from creating a sanctuary within, not because life is easy, but because you've decided not to let chaos sit in your soul. Some people will not understand your pull toward quiet. They will mislabel your silence as weakness. They'll call your boundaries selfish. They'll misread your stillness as stagnation. That's because they haven't learned the power of peace. They haven't tasted the presence that comes when everything else is turned down and God is turned up. Guard your mornings. Protect your solitude. Care enough. Defend your prayer life. Preserve your mental space. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're pro-wholeness. Not because you're avoiding people, but because you're preserving peace. And peace isn't passive. Peace is a force. Peace is a decision. Peace is warfare. Choosing peace in a chaotic world is a rebellion against dysfunction. When you choose peace, you say to the enemy, "You will not steal my mind. You will not rattle my purpose. You will not have my attention today." Oh, peace is not just a feeling. It is evidence of healing. It's the sign that your soul has stopped bleeding. It's the result of boundaries, healing, wisdom, and presence. And like any garden, it needs care, needs time, it needs privacy. So don't feel guilty for pulling away. Don't apologize for choosing quiet over chaos. Don't explain your boundaries to people who benefit from your burnout. You are not cold. You are wise. You are not distant. You are anchored. Because every woman called to something great must first master the rhythm of withdrawal. You must learn how to come away from the noise. Not because you are weak, but because you are wise enough to know that peace isn't given. It's guarded. And when you protect your private place, you protect your power. You move with clarity. You speak with discernment. You walk in divine timing because you're no longer swayed by the storm. You're centered in stillness.